So my experiment was to determine the impact of starter on the rise of sourdough bread as well as the bubble size in sourdough bread. And I basically made 3 loaves of bread with varying amounts of sourdough starter. Since I was making 3 breads instead of one, I chose to halve my original recipe and adjust the cooking time accordingly. And my original hypothesis states that adding more starter to the bread leads to more bacterial growth and activity, leading the sourdough bread to rise more and the bubble size within each bread to increase. Regarding my data, I wanted to measure the rise of the bread by measuring the height of the bread. And I did this by cutting all 3 loaves in half and measuring the height of the middle section. Regarding the bubble diameter, I took the 5 largest bubbles from each cross section and I averaged them to determine the average bubble diameter. So just to restate this, but my original hypothesis stated that adding more starter to the bread leads to more bacterial growth and activity, leading the sourdough bread to rise more and the bubble size to increase. So after I took the 3 doughs out after letting them rise for 10 hours, I observed that my dough with the most sourdough starter rose the most, and the one with the least sourdough starter rose the least. After I baked the breads and measured their heights to determine the rise, there was no significant difference between the loaves, disproving my hypothesis. However, based on my data, the average bowl diameter increased, which agrees with my hypothesis. This may be a result of increased bacterial concentration from more starters added, leading to more bacterial growth and respiration, creating the larger bubbles. In conclusion, some parts of my hypothesis were proven, whereas other parts remain unclear. While a loaf with the most yeast rose the most initially, after all 3 loaves were baked, there was no significant difference. However, bubble size was observed to increase as the yeast concentration increased. Regarding experimental error and confounds, the chance of experimental error is high because I made 3 loaves of bread at the same time. In addition, because I could not bake the bread at the same time, some of the loaves rose and proofed for a longer duration of time, which could impact the overall results. Given this small sample size, 3, since I only made 3 loaves, it's hard to draw conclusions because I don't have that many data points. My aim for this experiment was to determine how the amount of yeast added impacted the texture of the bread through bubble size, as well as its shape through rise. Since there was a marginal difference in the rise between the lobes and the textures of the loaves were pretty similar, I probably won't alter the amount of yeast I'm currently using for future bread bakes. I plan on testing the impacts of water on bread texture and shape in the future though. I know that the water to flour ratio is extremely important in determining these variables, but it'll be interesting to see and prove its impacts.